Mikey.
Hello, and welcome to a special one-shot played on our Sunday campaign of a new RPG that recently came out. It was released in June of 2023. This is called Godkiller. This is based on the First Blood Ashcan rule set. The First Blood edition was written by Connie Chang with developmental editing by Mark Diaz-Truman and Kate Bullock. So this is a two-person RPG with myself, Liv, as God, the GM, and our dear friend Connor as Zachyriah, the Godkiller.
Hello.
So
That
this
is not the
is
voice.
not D&D, in case you haven't noticed. This is not Dungeons & Dragons. This is, as described, it is a holy punk powered by the apocalypse game. And we will weave a mythic, violent, and transformative tale about the only mortal in existence with the power to slay a god, rising against the challenges of the divine. Which gods will you kill to shape the realm, and which will you spare? Let me go ahead and get some good ambiance music going. Make sure to adjust your volume.
Yep. I'm all set.
And to begin, we will create the Cradle, the land in which everything happens. Zachyriah, do you have the questions pulled up?
I should be able to pull them out
They are on
quickly.
page
It's chapter
34.
1, right? 34.
Page 34. Please choose a question and answer it for me.
So, the way this works, do we take turns answering them,
Take
or?
turns. You start by answering a question of your choice from the list, and then I will do that.
I like. Hang on, I gotta turn my volume down. The music got way louder than it did at the beginning. Okay. I'm gonna just read them all out for a second. What beautiful place in the cradle do you call home, and what about it is broken? What god rules your home, and what must you do to tithe them in exchange? Who is your closest friend, and why can they never truly understand you? Who is the local heretic, and how are they humiliated or punished every day? And what group of mortals or monsters threatens your home, and what god do they serve? I'm going to answer the first one about the beauty and brokenness of it.
Okay.
Zachyriah's home in the cradle is this built into a mountainside city. It is beautifully designed with iconography and masterful artisan work, covering the sprawling, for medieval times, large city. There's flowing water, fixtures, thriving plant life. But what's broken about it is there's an air of death and hauntedness that hangs over it, that seems to poison the beauty of the area with this mournful, grieving weight. The same you would feel when you look at a museum and you see artifacts lifted from their native countries, and you see works of someone who has died thousands of years ago, and there's a small part of you that just mourns for them when looking upon their work. That same part of you would be overwhelmed walking through the city, seeing all the beauty left to ruin, abandoned.
My turn. Who is the local heretic, and how are they humiliated or punished every day? The local heretic in your town is named Barda. They're about 35 years old, male. Cropped, wavy gray hair, red eyes. Every day, they are taken out amongst your people, their people, and they are whipped until they profess their faith in the deity that guards your city, or until they succumb to unconsciousness from the pain. Barda, being the local heretic, has never professed, and every day he is beaten into unconsciousness as a silent crowd watches. His wounds are tended. He is not allowed to become ill or starve. He must be made an example of. And so it continues.
My turn. Oh. I'm going to answer, who is your closest friend and why can they never truly understand you? I think his name's Balfour. Balphore. Was that a ping for me to write it or type it?
No, I just
Okay.
misclicked.
Okay. I think he's a fellow. I think he's a co-worker of Zachyriah's, like an acquaintance that he meets often when doing his work. I think they get along well. They confide in each other. But I think Zachyriah feels a separation in his devoutness. I think Balfour is one of the people of the city who view the divine as take it or leave it. And Zachyriah, in his works, has this deep reverence for the idea of divinity, this ascended existence. And I think they disagree on the nature of the divine often in their private conversations. Obviously, they wouldn't have this out on the forum
Of
unless
course
they end up like Barda. But I think when all has been said and done, Zachyriah feels this guilt in entertaining the idea that from Balfour that the divine aren't as important as they purport to be. And Zachyriah, a small part of him considers exposing him each time they have this conversation to appease their god. And this rift keeps them from really understanding how Zachyriah and Balfour get to their respective positions. They just can't bridge this one fundamental gap in their worldviews.
My turn. What god rules your home, and what must you tithe to them in exchange? The god that rules your little city of Brelo is known as the Empress. Her power of abundance blesses the land, though you know it is not selfless. She hungers for hunger itself and cannot abide by a lack of life and growth. If you do not produce, you will be punished. You do not have to give, but you must create life. You must grow, or sire, or nurture, or you will suffer the consequences of the Empress's fury.
That brings it to the last one for me then.
Mm-hmm.
What group of mortals or monsters threaten your home, and what god do they serve? Let me browse through my remaining major arcana real quick.
Mm-hmm. You get to make a choice.
I think the creatures, not people, not anymore, that threaten my home are these desert-faring, minotaur-like bestial humanoids. I think they are nomadic and resent the idea of settling down in any one place. And following that, I think the god they serve is the Fool.
Very good.
As I add him to my stack.
Mm-hmm. Now, the cradle itself died a long time ago, but its ghost lives on. This is the necrotizing wound you call home. The massive corpses of slain deities populate ruined tracts of land, the gaps between their bones bristling with beasts and monsters, scavengers and pillagers, mortals and smaller gods. This is a realm both beautiful and desolate. Dark mysteries lurk in the shadows of every ruined temple, every desecrated shrine, every gilded promise gone to seed. The river, the original home of the gods, is also dead. Legends say it used to glisten across the night sky in a lustrous plume of stars, but now it hangs above our heads like an ill omen, colorless and limpid, a constant reminder of everything we've lost. One day, the river shall shed its final speck of dust, and it shall die for good, and the time of mortals and gods shall come to an end. But that is not this day. I weep for you. I weep for the violence the gods will inflict upon you, and the violence that you will inflict upon the gods. I weep for the person you used to be, before you emerged in a baptism of fire and blood, smeared in the viscera of a life you could have led, your hopes ignited on a funeral pyre. I weep for your mortal heart, entangled in a body cursed with divine providence. I weep for your dreams. I weep for your home. I weep for your parents and the child they will lose. The cannibals are real, and your world worships them. They call them light and sound, and water and breath, war and death and sex and drink, movement and flame, nature and destiny. There are names, endless as stars, infinite as the bottom of sorrow, gods. They will seek to use you in their game. You must not let them, for you are not the pawn, the worshipper, the sin confessed in darkness. You are not the witch, the heathen, the sweeping winds of change. You are not the saint, the lamb, the tinder set before the altar. You are not the revenant, the fury, the locks of hair from lovers lost. You are the Godkiller, and the gods will taste your steel. I have been waiting your arrival for 10,000 lifetimes. I can wait for one more. The cradle will know your deeds, your sins, your trophies, your epithets. Your arteries will run gold with the name of every god you'll kill. You will die, and your body will be interred in the parched banks of the dried-up river, and your enemies will weep, and I will weep, and maybe you will finally find rest. But first, you must kill a god. You have found yourself After losing your home, your friends, your family, nor you have found yourself in the city of Quorum, property of the god Chorus, god of sustenance. You spit at the name. Sustenance is meant to care for people, is meant to lift them up, to support them. This god hungers for poverty, cultivates and then consumes the impoverished, gives them enough to sustain them through lean and hungry winters, and barely scrape by, then fattens them up for the harvest. You have found his heart, merchant scales held by his bejeweled and befeathered humanoid form. You have found his downfall. To misbalance the scales, to make them false, to make their readings a lie, would be his undoing. And you stand before Chorus, the god of sustenance. You know his heart. You know his downfall. Zachyriah, what do you do?
Standing before this god, I hold his scales in my hand, and I have just a pocket full of sand from my trek here as I look up to him. My people starved in yearning for sustenance, and you left them. For years previous, you've played with our lives, only so you could feed. This insult ends today. By my hand, you will know the pain of starving and choking on your hunger as you fade into nothing. And he will reach into his pocket and pull out the sand and pour it through his fingers on one side of the scale and watch it dip down.
What do you look like in this moment?
I think Zachyriah is standing tall as he's staring down this god. And he hates them. There's no pity, no remorse. He just truly loathes this god. And any onlookers would be forgiven for being startled by the sheer casualty of his intent to murder everything in front of him.
What do you do?
With the scales tipped at one side, you will reach down and pick up gold coins from the floor that litter the lair of this god, place them on the other side, and then hold the sand side down to have them continue to weigh false, and slowly watch as that begins to unravel this god in front of him, with nothing but delight in his shrinking heart as he watches it perish.
Roll 2d6 to kill a god. That is a miss. As Chorus looks upon you and breathes out the word, Godkiller, and you feel the flames of your divinity ignite within you, surprising everyone in the room and yourself as well. You feel his power of sustenance leaching out of him and into you, and this is not what you expected. And as his form withers into this gray, desiccated husk, he stretches out a crooked hand, feathers crumbling to ash. Thou shalt not aid those in need.
Damn.
And you are cursed.
Is there any physical sign of this curse?
Tell me how it manifests on you.
I think following his peacock look, I think there's these... It almost looks like burn scars for a moment up his arm. These peacock feathers, as if they were tattoos on his arm. But not darker, just impressed skin. Stretch up his arm, and as if palm fronds covering the ground for a higher being to walk upon, these feathers reach up and cover his heart, so as to show that he's not to use it to aid those in need.
And as you take on this curse, one by one, the servants of Chorus flee, and out in the streets, you begin to hear voices. Some fearful, some joyous, some angry. Word is spreading that a Godkiller has emerged in the Cradle, the first one ever. And their patron is dead. Another god will inevitably take their place. Whether or not the words that have spread of your deeds are true or falsehoods, you are unsure. And as you emerge from this withered merchant's building, flocks upon flocks of albino peacocks swarm the skies, screeching, horrifying, desperate cries. And for a second, the sky is completely covered in white before they dissipate. So, Godkiller, what will you do now?
Standing on the steps of Chorus's now once temple, now tomb, Zachyriah will lower his head after basking in the feeling of the sun returning after the peacocks scattered. He'll lower his head down, likely looking out at scrambling masses. Sword likely still dripping with blood from carving his way into this temple.
Oh shit, they found me.
Shouldn't have killed a god.
Shouldn't have killed a god.
Zachyriah will begin the trek through this populated town back to his home to plan his next steps. and fully ruminate on what it is to be a Godkiller until he finds inspiration to find a new target to bring low.
Where do you go to be safe? Where is your home?
Back in Brilo, Zachyriah returns to this empty, abandoned town, trekking up and up to the higher reaches, not returning to his home that he once lived in, but into the royal crypt where he now remains. He enters in, and where normally there was just a single stone bed for an undertaker, there now exists, besides the normal entombed corpses, a singular statue by the bed. Zachyriah knows this figure as Nor, his late parted wife. And to find safety, he will remain here in this crypt, lying next to her unmoving, petrified body. Until morning breaks his peace anew, and he's forced to walk again in search of some purpose.
What do you search for?
There are two answers that he has. One more true than he cares to admit. The first he would say is peace. He's hurting and alone. But the truer answer, he seeks vengeance on the gods who ignored his pleas to save his wife, save his family, save his people, and instead turned a deaf ear of indifference upon him and let them all wither, except him. That is a mistake he intends to make them pay for.
Who do you seek out first? You have your targets. Who do you pursue?
In the burning natural disaster that struck his home, he cried out to his wife and people to have faith in the Empress, goddess of their lands, that she would see them through so long as they remained faithful, to not despair, to remain faithful. And these cries echo through these haunted corridors and alleyways, and the only way he can think to silence them is to exterminate the god to which he profaned devotion to. He seeks the Empress.
You know that in order to destroy a god, you must find their heart, and you must know their downfall. You know none of this. How will you find it?
He'll begin by preparing for a journey to search for a place that holds the answers. I think his preparations involve both his training before chorus and now takes a long period of time, and still carrying the merchant scales from his first kill. I think he takes his sword to an old forge and begins to attempt to melt down his trophy, coat his blade with it, to strike maybe not terror into his enemies, but to send a message. He's not shying away from slaughtering the gods, and his devotion has expired. And on this thought, he'll attempt to gild his sword, and I don't think there's anything I roll for that.
No. Especially with access to Chorus's power of sustenance, your connection to the battered remnants of his heart through that power lets you manipulate it easily to gild your sword.
He stares down at the forge fire that he has ignited, and places his sword over the burning coals. Sees it glow red hot, ready to be worked. And he takes out the scales from beside him, and as if holding a candle and letting it drip wax, will hold it over the sword and begin muttering blasphemous, almost mantras, tenets, prayers, vowing his revenge, to spill the blood of the gods who forsook him, to avenge his fallen loved ones. In all this, he does out of hate for what they've done to him. As he says this, the scale drips as if it too were made of wax, and as each drop of gold hits the blade, as if like water to a sponge, it soaks into it, until the last of it pours from his hand, and he removes a prepared blade from the fire.
As you speak these blasphemous prayers, you feel yourself getting more and more agitated and more determined, and one of the fangs, lion-like, pricks your bottom lip in the middle of a curse. A mark of your covenant of tutelage with Sekhmet. You feel her bloodlust coursing through you, even more so now that you have tasted as she has tasted. You have drunk the blood of a god, and you will not be satiated with only one. Her bloodlust is yours in this moment, and it urges you onward.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
What would it be to try and... I guess the closest I could say would be enchant the sword to just burn with this fire of hatred he has in him. Maybe it does, the flames... I don't know too strongly the mechanics, but this sword is becoming his icon of hate. But I don't know if this is on the line where I need to have
Would you say that
awakened.
this is impulsive?
I think in the same way that him biting his lip without realizing it, some of the blood drips out, and yes, I don't think it's consciously impulsive.
Okay.
I think he just does it without thinking.
Answer me this.
Mm-hmm.
What advantage do you seize, or What trouble hits you hard and fast?
From doing this? Or
If you are doing this, acting impulsively, then you will answer me one or the other. And I will answer the other.
I think the advantage is that his sword, he successfully imbues it with this ever-burning, everlasting, god-rending hate that fuels him. And this blade, like an extension of him, now flows like an extra appendage in his grasp. And where before he held a rudimentary understanding of blade work, now through this blade, fueled by his hate, it is like art from his old life. He paints through the air with strokes, now with a blade instead of brush. And it is a powerful and elegant dance that he does with it. So what trouble hits me hard
The
and
trouble
fast?
that hits you hard and fast in your newly awakened state, returning to the safety of this crypt. Your focus was elsewhere. You did not notice the figure follow you. And you suddenly feel a blade pressed into the small of your back.
You'll freeze. Does the blade, it pauses, it doesn't continue the shiv?
It doesn't continue. It's a warning. It is sharp, precise.
I might understand. You intend to follow through with this threat?
If I must. A small voice speaks behind you. Feminine, young.
And what is it that you hesitate for?
I don't know what will befall me if I succeed.
Then why do it?
Because I must.
Tell me, do you have loved ones who will mourn you when you're gone?
Are you trying to connect with someone?
Um. Hmm. Hmm. I think so. Either that or feel someone or something out. I was leaning towards this was the prelude to him inflicting violence, but
If you would like to inflict violence.
I think he's gonna try and connect. Does this sound like a young person?
Yes, the voice sounds young.
Okay. He will definitely try and connect with them. Use connect with someone.
Okay.
So same as before, I answer one.
Tell them something intimate and answer one of the two questions.
What you see around you is what remains of all the people who mourn, who I mourn. There's no day that goes by when I don't wish I could trade everything I have to see just one of them again. I pray. No, not pray. I beseech you to consider how they will mourn you if you continue down this path. He's trying to shock some sense into them, but also let them know.
Which question do you answer?
Elaborating a little further, he'll say, We aren't entirely different. I too was raised in deep devotion to the divine. I understand your quest here to slay me on their behalf. But know it is a fool's errand, and this pain and courtesy I share with you is because I too have walked the path you walked, and wish to save others from ending down my path.
She will reply with what still divides you, as you have shared the common ground that connects you. I am a servant of the Empress, and she has ordered your death. The blade presses an inch into your spine.
He winces for a moment. I think he's going to try and inflict violence.
Okay.
To lunge forward with that elegance he's learned with his blade. To disarm them. Not a blade, arm.
They definitely wish you harm. Are
They
you
do?
desperate?
Not yet.
Is it
This is
personal?
his fight with the Empresses. This is
Then that is +2. So roll 2d6. And
+2.
we will add 2 to the result.
Oh, thank God.
It's an 11.
Sorry, I shouldn't say that in the game.
I don't know. It's kind of funny.
Uh-oh.
That is an overkill.
He sure is.
On a 10+, you
Now
lose yourself
Mm-hmm.
to your righteous fury. I would say that in this moment, this is the first time your divinity awakens. As the Empress ordering your death through this young girl, as you turn, attempting to take her arm from her body. But that instinct of pain, combined with this new sword, this new power, this new divinity, you have imbued this sword with your hatred for the gods. And she has invoked the name of a god you hate above nearly all others. You turn around, and before you realize, the burning flames gifted to you from your tutelage of Sekhmet have burst from you and from your sword, and they envelop you, and you see a look of shock on this girl's face. She can't be more than 17, as she is lifted up, impaled on your sword.
A flaming mane of fire like a lion surrounds him as he looks her in the eyes, burning red eyes, pitch black around the pupils. I will avenge this. The Empress will pay for the blood she forced you to have spilled today. Know that your death will not be in vain.
And in the last moments, as the life is leaving her eyes, this little girl looks terrified. And then she doesn't look anything.
He would drop the sword and watch her body smack against the ground.
Her arms kind of splay out, limp. And for a second, it reminds you of finding Nor.
He will sheath his sword and begin. Let me check something on my sheet before I finish narrating this.
Mm-hmm.
I need to double check divine moves.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's no limit to how many times my divinity can awaken, right?
Once it's awakened, it's on until you unleash it.
Okay. Oh, it just stays on.
Yeah, until you unleash it.
Ooh.
And then it goes dormant once more. Until you awaken it again.
I was considering using it on her, but I think not. Still with this burning lion's mane of fire around him, sends this suffocating smoke into the air. He will tenderly reach down after sheathing his sword and pick up her body. And as if she could still hear him, he begins to speak to her. I wonder too, had my daughter, had my child come out and been given the chance at life, if they would have grown to a devout father such as you. And he's carrying her to the embalmer's table. And he'll begin to work and bind up her body to store her in the crypt. It is not for me to know, I suppose. She closes her eyes. May you have found peace beyond the reach of your God. And if not, may you find peace in knowing that I will make them pay for your death. And in finishing wrapping them, he will place them onto one of the burial shelves in the crypt.
How are you feeling right now?
He knows it was what he had to do. He knows the fervor of devotion. But he is still saddened and pained by having to take the life of someone who didn't know better, and wishes that there was some way to have given her the chance to be better. And more than a little scared of himself having lost control for a moment. Before remembering, his fear of this power is overshadowed by his desire for revenge. And I think that's what pulls him from the very mortal, empathic recoiling from what he's done. But still, this feeling of fear and anger hovers in him for a while as he begins to head out.
What kind of city do you travel to? What do you seek out?
The Empress is known for charging her people to create, her devotees to create, to resist stagnation. So he seeks out this blooming evergreen city, foliage all around, thriving mercantile, thriving art, business, booming population, sprawling structures. Likely some city directly devoted to her, and whose temple is at the center of the government. And he eyes up what is likely the peak of the city, the closest to the heavens and the river. And eyes where he's going to go track down some high priest or priestess of the Empress to interrogate. Blade in hand, flames licking up the blade and around his collarbone. Lion features more express, fangs piercing through the lips as he marches into town, ready to cut down any who attempt to stop him.
Few move to stop you. Few move in your direction at all. Most flinch away from you in fear, and you make your way to the temple unobstructed. As you stride inside, you find a middle-aged human man preaching to a congregation of the virtues of the Empress and her gifts of abundance, and that all they must do is be fruitful to encourage life.
I think the inside of this temple has hanging vines and branches of actual fruit trees that line the inner of the sanctum.
Beautiful. There is life bursting from every crevice.
And I think he sees this flammable foliage and lifts up his sword and pokes the tip of the blade against a leaf and begins to twist the blade into the bark as he trails it down to set it ablaze. And then a single flick to try and fling the flames down the row to start a blaze in the temple as he stands directly down the aisle staring at the high priest.
The high priest, calmly, makes a gesture with his hand, and several attendants move over to the fire and cut the burned pieces away so that they cannot continue to spread and extinguish the flames.
Zachyriah will begin to march down the aisle towards the high priest.
The high priest speaks to the congregation. Do not be afraid. The Empress will protect us, and we will hold fast in her sanctuary. We will not allow this blasphemy to remove our faith.
Zachyriah steps up onto the stage, heavy metal boots and armor, hearing the wood creak and moan under his weight as he stands up there. Is that still the poison you feed these people? That the Empress cares for them? And very quickly he flicks his arm up, holding the sword, up under the chin of the high priest. Blade just slightly in front of the Adam's apple. The flames likely singeing the tightly cut beard or stubble that remains.
Are you challenging someone dangerous?
Absolutely.
Okay. What foolish or risky action do you hope he will take?
So he is expecting. I feel, in fairness, I should say one risky action, though I see two avenues. In transparency, I'll say two, and then tell you which one I'm going to commit to.
Okay.
Zachyriah believes this man will either martyr himself and do nothing, and the risky behavior is he underestimates the power he holds. He believes him a charlatan, and that the Empress is more powerful than him, and he's risking his life on this faith. The other is that he will send his attendants to remove him to show the strength of the Empress' followers. And that is risky, because they will all bleed and flow a path of blood and carnage for him to walk upon when they try it. He's counting on them trying to force him out of here. That's second one.
Okay. They do not care about your opinions, so that doesn't add.
Nope.
They definitely think they are stronger than you.
Mm-hmm.
The crowd is not on your side, so you add +1, roll 2d6.
Oh, 7. That's just enough.
That is just enough. He rises to the bait and makes another gesture. Several heavily armed protective guards of the faith come up to grab your shoulders. A third grabs your sword arm.
I think the moment he touches it, there's a flash. As I would like to try and inflict violence on all those who are coming to get him.
They definitely wish you harm.
Mm-hmm.
Are you desperate?
Not yet.
Is it personal?
Few other places could be more personal than it is now.
And that is another +2. Roll 2d6.
Oh.
Another 11. Your divinity already burning from your first true murder. You don't see Chorus as a murder. That was a mercy.
No. A mercy to the people, at least.
But the murder of the girl has left you shaken and roiling, the bloodlust closer on the back of your tongue than you have ever tasted it. And these people are in your way. You lose yourself to your righteous fury. And you turn and slaughter each of the 3 guards that had approached you. But it does not stop. How do I want to have this continue?
Is the high priest still standing up there?
He is.
After, I imagine at least to give you some time to vamp, I'd like to describe that his violence is the one that grabs his arm. He's holding the sword out, fully extended. And in a moment, as if, like he's described, a third limb, some phantasmal muscle, he bends his arm in and the sword rotates on his palm to decapitate the first one. He rolls it around his shoulder, drawing it in for a stab at the second one, plunging it into its heart, twisting the blade and blasting fire out as he pulls it back out, scorching the chest cavity of it. For the third one, they're charging forward to him in grief and loss of their 2 allies. He simply will flip the sword to a reverse grip and in a spin move backwards, up through the skull, take his short sword through the head, through the skull, adjust his grip back to normal, and then a twisting flick out as fire shoots out from the body again as he brings the blade back to the neck of the high priest. Would you like to send more of your devout to fall by my blade? Or are you ready to answer my interrogations and face my judgment?
As a cost of your divinity, these flames spread further, their radius gradually increasing around you. And you realize that they have set the foliage on fire again. But this time, a large tree has crashed in front of the door, and it is on fire, and the temple is on fire, and the people are trapped. Innocents are trapped, and the priest looks at you. You have wrought this destruction.
Oh
You
no.
have brought this here, and their blood will be on your hands.
My curse! No! Okay, Connor's having a moment. I need to review on breaking a curse. I know the most risky way is to just break it.
Yep.
And then it will go away after, and I will suffer the consequences.
You will suffer the consequences, but it is what is more important to you. These are the faithful, the devout of the Empress.
He thinks back to the young girl. He will I'd like to. Would it be some sort of roll to just slice the back of the legs of the priest to immobilize him while I go to deal with something else?
At this point, I would say no. He's standing still. He will accept whatever you are inflicting.
I'll
Your
slice his
challenge
Achilles
lies
heel.
elsewhere at this point.
I'll slice his Achilles heel to just force him into a groveling kneel,
Yep.
holding onto his podium, his lectern, as I approach the burning tree. And I see the crowds beginning to, mothers likely covering their children, seeing flames begin to descend.
Oh, yes. The flames are continuing. It's essentially the walls of the temple are completely in flames as every bit of life is slowly being burnt away. It's almost like the stones themselves are shrieking in pain. Some people have remained in their seats. Some people have tried, but the windows were very quickly engulfed in flames as the perimeter, where most of the vegetation was lush and thick, went up very quickly. And it seems that every avenue of egress is blocked.
Zachyriah will look at them. You have seen the true face of your empress. If you have faith for her still, you are welcome to remain in the flame. Until then, cry out and forsake her, and find liberation from the fire. This is... He's not considering his curse. I want to say this is probably act impulsively.
Okay.
He's not quite thinking of how he's going to avoid getting this curse worked around yet.
Mm-hmm. So what is the main emotion that drives you here?
Remorse for the 17-year-old girl, and some surviving guilt from that, trying to motivate him to save some of them.
Answer one of the two questions.
What advantage do I seize? What trouble hits me hard and fast? I think I want to describe the trouble this time.
Go ahead.
The trouble that hits him hard and fast. Despite his movement to try and take these people who are desperate and offer them salvation, I think the first people to say things are that loud and vocally begin to proclaim their love for the Empress, intimidating the others who were willing to rebuke her into silence. Does that feel fair?
Yes.
Okay.
There are absolutely many that cry out that you are the source of this destruction. The Empress would never bring this upon them, that you have wrought this destruction here at her most sacred of temples. Others that do not respond simply weep and scream and shield themselves from the ever-encroaching heat of the flames. As the perimeter grows hungrier and hungrier in the flames, and the unburning circle on the inside shrinks more and more.
What advantage do I seize?
The advantage that you seize is that you see, as people are moving and shifting to get away from the flames, you see the people that remain stationary, and you notice the people that are more mobile, that are moving. And you see in that gap, there is a small, it will maybe last about 10 seconds. But there is a small path to a window that has shattered open in the heat. And you probably have about 10 seconds to get people through it.
And none have cried out to rebuke the Empress?
People have either rebuked your actions or have cowered in fear.
And I have 10
Whether or not
seconds.
they are refusing to rebuke
Whether
or not they are refusing to rebuke or are insensate to everything but the immediate danger, you are unsure.
And so I have 10 seconds before that window closes, or 10 seconds before the fire takes them?
10 seconds before that window closes. Before that area of egress to get to that shattered window, before it will be completely engulfed in flames, that small path.
I think he's going to unleash his divinity.
What would you like to do?
So as I understand it, I'm thinking of it, I describe some sort of like wish I want to do with this. And then I describe one of those 3 side effects.
It's either brief, obvious, or
Right.
unstable, and you describe how you exert your will on reality.
I think it's obvious. I think he sunders the temple to collapse outward, tumbling down the city.
Like cracking open a walnut, you raise your gilded sword with the power of Chorus, and you strike it deep into the lush earth in the center of this temple, and this divinity radiates out from you in a blast, striking up and outwards as it cracks open.
I think it breaks open and splinters this temple into shrapnel, but the people will look and see that they are unharmed, despite the force they feel wash over them.
Indeed.
As this deafening lion's roar fills the air.
It's almost as though the sound of the roar and the heat of your flames canceling out the others create a bit of a barrier in that unburned space that vaporize any debris.
As he finishes his roar, he'll look down. And I think with this phrase he will have gone against his curse. As he utters. He will point with his sword down the steps, pointing at the city burning. Go. Save those you love. And remember that the Empress has abandoned you. As he has helped these people out of the fire he started, I think that qualifies as breaking his curse.
I believe it does. Now, describe one of the 3.
Can you give me information on what shifts beyond your reach means?
As in, it is no longer available, it is no longer accessible. It could be a power, it could be a person, it could be a piece of knowledge.
I think what mutates beyond recognition is that those peacock feather impressions on his skin splinter, and he has this burned, scarred, horrifying visage up his left half, up his arm, over his chest, down his side, extending up and onto his face. Maybe not entirely taking his face yet, but he is now forever scarred and a horrifying visage to look at.
As you await disaster, and this mutates beyond recognition, the curse surges forth to claim its dues. And I have to decide which I want to answer.
Oh, you do one as well.
The GM will answer one other, describing how the curse surges forth to claim its due.
I forgot about that part.
This is why this is so interesting.
I forgot how much it costs to violate a curse.
It does. You await disaster.
true.
What shatters beyond repair is the sense of safety, of comfort, of home you felt in that crypt with your wife. That's where you committed your first murder. What led you here? To the desecration of this temple, to the deaths of those guards, to the near murders of these innocents, for that is what they are. And you know in that moment, you can never go home. It will not be the same. You will never again be able to find peace in that place. It's not home anymore.
Brutal. He kind of looks up, clutching onto the sword from breaking the curse.
As gently, rain begins to fall, extinguishing the last of the flames, and your divinity goes dormant.
He'll look up at the priest, who was unable to flee from his disabling earlier, still kind of heaving in pain.
Coughing from a bit of smoke inhalation, slightly singed where the flames had begun to near him. You see he had tried to crawl, to drag himself forward. His fingertips are bloodied from clutching at the stone of the pulpit to drag himself forward, away from the flames.
Zachyriah will begin to walk towards him, blades gliding across the ground, the flames on the sword unable to be extinguished by the rain, until he stands at the crawling body, where he will press his heel into the back of the knee of the high priest and begin to crush the patella on the other side.
He's in so much pain at this point that it barely registers. It's there, but it's just another layer. You look closer at his feet and you can see where the soles have begun to burn away, and you see exposed bone.
He will place his sword in front of him and plant it in the ground, as if to say, stop. He will reach down and grab him by the back of the collar and lift him up, breaking his back backwards, whispering in his ear, "Now the interrogation comes. You will tell me of the Empress's heart, and how I will fell her, and only then will you receive the mercy of death."
The breaking of his back helps, ironically enough, because it does sever those nerves. And he gasps, and he does start to go into shock. His eyes roll back into his head. He comes to consciousness probably about 20-30 seconds later. The Empress is everywhere. She is the wheat in the fields, the grain that grows and embraces the rain. And she will not fall to mortal weapons.
I am no mortal weapon. I would like... I think I'd like to do Tempt Fate. And
Okay.
here's why.
What perilous feat are you trying to accomplish?
I think he rips the top of his body from the bottom, and he's tempting fate that he doesn't bleed out before you can scare him into giving him an answer.
Well, a skilled ally is not lending you a hand. Do you have other options?
This is an macro. Yeah, God, this could have been acted impulsively, but oh well. No, I don't. He has other options of finding other people. No, this is the most holy city. This is the best option he has, is to milk it out of this guy.
Okay, you have no other options. You are not far from any god that wishes you harm. You are right in her heart.
Yeah, right.
So you have a +1. Roll 2d6.
As he pulls him up, he goes to walk towards the ledge where all the city can see him drip and bleed.
+1, that's a 5.
No!
That's a 5. That is a miss. The fates laugh in your face. You rip his body apart at the section where you had broken his back, right above his pelvis, right above his hips. He gasps in fear, in pain, and he almost... It's almost as though you can see in the tensing of the muscles in his abdomen that he's trying to move his legs that are no longer there.
He's holding him over the ledge. Tell me how to do it.
Blood gurgles out of his mouth. His eyes are blank and unseeing. His breath gasping in his chest.
Hold on! As he's shaking him now, trying to wake him up.
As you shake him, trying to wake him, you shake him and his neck snaps and his eyes go dull. Neck cocked at an impossible angle.
In rage, he'll
Below,
cry.
you hear screams and weeping.
Enraged, he'll cry, "Damn you, Empress! This will not be the end of it!" And he will throw the body over the ledge into the city.
There is so much weeping, so much screaming. From people that have never witnessed such violence to people that have known this man their entire lives. To see him destroyed so violently and horrifically.
Zachyriah
You
sits.
take 1 strain.
Ooh. There's no effects until I hit 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
At 1 strain, yeah, at 1 strain, it's like you've gone through a little bit of shit, but you're still pretty much fine.
Zachyriah will sit on the sundered. I like to imagine somehow the stage is mostly still there.
It can be.
Like the stone foundations of it remain. And he just sits on there, wondering what he's going to do next. There's no holy text to find. He sundered the whole building and sent it burning into the city. There's likely screams of that debris impacting people and homes. He's murdered the person who knows the most about the Empress.
I would say at this point, as you're thinking, that would be to recognize a god.
Oh, yes.
You're trying to recognize this message that he gave you, so you are in their domain.
Mm-hmm. He was...
You are familiar with her gospel.
He was a devotee of hers.
So that's a +2. I wouldn't say that it would be bad if you didn't know. It's bad already. If you know, it's not going to get much better. So
That's
I will
fair.
say it is a +2.
That's
Roll
very
2d6
valid.
to recognize a god.
Please, God!
5. Okay, so 7. That is a hit. Barely a hit.
He places the sword and
You
is looking at his
recognize that as
reflection.
he says, she is the wheat that grows in the fields, the grain that embraces the rain. You remember, as you were coming into this city, there is a lush field of grain that smells sweet and looks perfect and ripe. And it's more beautiful than anything you've ever seen. This is her heart.
Which means I still need to find
Her downfall.
Are there any other... Who would be the next in line? Who's the next source of information you can find? Is there a library or something in town that might have some of her texts?
Now, my love,
Some, like...
my dear Godkiller, I am going to remind you that gods guard their hearts.
It's true.
Very carefully. And the only thing they guard ever closer is their downfall.
How does one find it out?
It will not be written. There would be no text that would contain it. Any text where it had been even briefly written, even briefly discovered. Any god would snuff this knowledge from the surface of the cradle the moment it emerged.
Zachyriah.
Mortals will not know this information.
What does it take to contact one of the gods in my covenant?
You can pray for guidance. Name the aid you seek. And tell me either what kind of god answers your prayers, or what unclear omens or visions besiege you.
He's going to pray for guidance.
Name the
to
aid
justice.
you seek. Of justice.
He's going to ask them to reveal to him what the downfall of the Empress is. He kneels to his blade, his burning altar, atop the sundered foundation, praying for justice to reveal to him truth, to help his mission to bring balance.
Now tell me,
think
either what kind of god answers you, or what unclear omens or visions besiege you.
I think I've described it. It's going to be justice. That is the god who answers the prayer.
You reach out, kneeling, and you beg out of this covenant of bitterness with justice. You resent him for the balance he has, for his gifts that he will not bestow upon you. He must punish the guilty and free the innocent. But you are both. Balance. You beg for balance. And the unclear omens and visions that besiege you. You see the lush field of wheat that you know to be the Empress's heart, withered and rotted. Some sort of plague or blight. A power. You recognize this as the result of a power similar to yours that you have taken. And you see, out of the corner of your eye, you recall all these moments. The killing of the girl, the killing of the guards, the killing of the priest, the death of your wife. A dark shadow that flickered in the corner of your eye as their life left them.
He kind of pulls away from the vision, thinking he must inflict death on this goddess who strives for life. And he thinks to the power of sustenance he took from Chorus. Chorus fed his hunger was poverty. I have his power of sustenance, right?
You have his power of sustenance.
Can I use a power to withhold? Can I, like, rather than provide sustenance with it, can I attempt to withdraw sustenance from the wheat fields?
With
To draw
wielding a
out
power,
the food?
you can attempt.
Mm-hmm.
You have not done this specific act before. Not
Nope.
perfectly. You are desperate for this to work.
Mm-hmm.
You will be marking 1 strain. You are not close to the shrine, lair, or domain of Chorus. Roll 2d6 to see if this works. 5. Your power sputters, and the vines, as you try to withhold the sustenance from these plants, to rip it from them, vines sprout from the earth and wrap around your hands that you've dug into the soil and leach from you.
I'm at 4 strain now, aren't I?
It looks like if
Oh.
you want to achieve the full effect before they can react, then you would suffer 2 strain instead of 1.
I think it might be an
Entirely
addition.
sure. Suffer. Your power
I
sputters
think
and your enemy seize on your weakness. Suffer 2 strain instead. I'm going to see if I can find this in the full one and not just the move sheet.
I believe this
See if
means that I'm going to fail to use my power unless I'm going, or I can
That's what
bear
I'm
2 strain
up, okay.
to commit.
On a miss, you fail completely. You can always push yourself to achieve your intended effect. You are the Godkiller after all. But the cost is enormous at 3 strain. So yes, you would be at 4 strain if you push yourself to achieve this effect. But it is within your reach.
I'm standing outside the
Possibly.
city, right?
You can be.
Rain still pouring.
Rain is still falling.
He mentioned that she embraces the rain, and I see it watering these wheat fields. And I think the way he pushes himself, he feels that heat inside of him and tries to evoke it out of him to dry up the rain, leaving this fog that doesn't penetrate the ground, to desiccate and stop the aid of these plants. Without their water, they thirst, and he pulls what little food they have stored with them. The fog obscures the sun and suffocates.
You see the wheat desiccate and dry out, but it does not wither or crumble. This is not the effect you saw in your vision. This is not rot. This is, you know in this moment, temporary. You've dealt her a blow. You have let her know that you have found her heart. But you have not found her downfall yet.
He stands shakily at 4 strain. Is there anything nearby that isn't the town?
What are you looking for?
Somewhere to rest.
You can find it. There is a secluded cave that is far enough away that the townspeople that may be watching you would not see you enter it. They would see you fully leave. and not remain nearby. And in this moment, as you are leaving, you turn to glance over your shoulder and you see them tending to their town. Some watch you, but it seems to be more of ensuring that you are not coming back and not watching to follow. They have other problems to deal with now. You find a safe place to rest.
He crashes down. I imagine he no longer needs to eat. As a general use of his power, he is sustained by it, I think.
Just enough. You are not satisfied, but you are sustained.
He rests there, closing his eyes, and weeps, knowing the feeling of resting near his wife can never be recovered.
How do you tend to your strain?
I like to imagine there's a small pool of cave water that he submerges himself in. As he's
It's cool and
mournfully
refreshing.
weeping, mourn-filled weeping, he has lost his wife all over again. Not even her memory is with him anymore. Not really. He lies there, tears down his face. I worry how long it will be until I forget your name more. I worry this path I walk down, that I've made a mistake. But it's too late for me to turn back now. And I swore an oath to you that I would avenge you and those I've slain to get here. I cannot back down now. But forgive me for what I do. Forgive me. As he lies there soaking in the water, just untensing his muscles for the first time in a long time.
Gradually, the strain eases, and you find rest.
How much strain, if any, do I clear?
You clear 3.
I'm down to 1.
Mm-hmm.
He wakes up, feeling the cave water entering his ears as he's slumped down. And slowly opens his eyes and begin to rise. He thinks he's dreamed of how to incur rock. And that field can't move, but perhaps if he can drive them away from it, it'll rot all on its own. But he saw that it was an effect of a power that had to be used, correct?
Yes. You know what that means.
I'd like to pray for guidance to one of the other major arcana.
Okay.
I think what I described is what kind of God answers the prayer. I think he contacts death.
Okay. Name the aid you seek from death.
The power to bring about the downfall of the Empire.
You see, yet again, those visions of the shadow seen out of the corner of your eye as you have ended life, or found a life at its end. You see a hunger consuming life there at the end of it all. You see a tall, dark-robed figure with a scythe. And you see wheat rotting in a field, then reaped.
You look up. How far would the nearest temple to death be?
A few days' travel.
He knows he needs that power to upend her, and no prayer from here will convince death to give it to him. So onward he has to march. I think part of him, as he marches through the desert, wishes death would come from him. But as if by a cruel twist of fate, I think the sustenance refuses to let him wither in the desert. Does he arrive at the temple?
You do.
He will sheath his sword and walk in.
You find several dark-robed acolytes, hoods drawn, veils obscuring their faces.
I seek your god. You should know of my arrival.
All of them speak in one voice. You have found them.
Death. And he will drop to a knee. You know I am no pious man any longer. But know it is true that my hate for the gods who wronged me outweighs my pride. Bestow to me the power to bring the downfall of the Empress. I beg.
All the voices speak at once. What will you give?
What have you not already taken from me?
The air goes deathly silent. Nothing stirs, nothing moves. What will you give?
He thinks back to the cursed unborn child, back at the crypt, forever stuck in limbo, not quite dead, not quite alive, but still of him, still his. I give you a potential for life, divine life, waiting in limbo. I forfeit it to you in exchange for this power. It will be yours by right, should you accept.
I'm going to say this is you doing as you're told, because you are answering what you give.
Yeah.
That is how you show your submission.
Yeah.
Which question do you answer?
two schools of thought here. I either take the reward one and guarantee I get the power, or I choose which vulnerability. But I think it's more fun for you to be able to upend my character's vulnerability. So I'm going to choose how I'm rewarded.
How are you rewarded?
And the acolytes reach forward and place their hand on his forehead, bestowing the power of death onto him.
You have been
Granted.
gifted the power of consumption.
Mm.
The
He
vulnerability
feels.
that you reveal in this moment. This is all you have left.
It is.
Death has already known this. Death has always known this. But the vulnerability that you reveal in this moment is that you would never take it. You would never have accepted just this one life. You would never risk removing the child from Nor. Because what if it's the only thing keeping her alive? That hope. But you are now without hope. And so you give this as you accept in this vulnerability that your wife and your child are dead and they will not return.
There's a part of him that mourns her all over again. And there's a part of him that rejoices a little bit that his child is no longer held in eternal limbo.
And you see again in this moment a shadow out of the corner of your eye. And for a second, it feels like there is a knife of ice in your heart as this connection to your child is severed.
He just murmurs to himself, "This is for the best. Her father died with her mother. I'm all that remain." And he will rise. I think now would be a great time for a break.
Yeah, it sure would. So go ahead and pause the recording real quick. And we have returned to the cradle. As Zachyriah receives his power from death, the power of consumption, the downfall of the Empress.
Zachyriah will stand and begin to walk out. He pauses for a moment as if he wants to say something. He can't find the words, or maybe it's just force of habit from his life of devotion, but there's some reverence he holds here. But he still leaves without a further word, and continues trekking back towards the Empress's holy city. I think he'd like to try out his new power first before he gets there.
Okay.
Finding a desert snake, perhaps.
You've never done this specific act before.
No, he's not.
Are you desperate for this to work?
No.
You're still close to a shrine of the god you took the power from, so that's a +1. So roll
Yeah.
2d6.
Just one.
7.
Oh,
The exact one. I love the dice. You do
so
it. It works.
what he's trying to do is just consume the life of the snake like he plans to do for the wheat. Just pull the life from it.
You see a similar effect to the rot you saw in your vision. And you know that this is her downfall.
He squeezes the life out of it, and he feels... I feel like his powers aren't separate inside of him. I feel like they mix together. He's, after all, one person, so this sustenance and consumption, I think he feeds deeply on this life he's taken. And I think he's more than a little thrilled at the thought of tasting god blood through this power. Consuming her, not just killing like he did with Chorus, but to take every drop of her being and digest it within him. And he unclenches his fist, thinking over his plans. He picks up the snake's body, crushes its skull like dust, and drops it in the dirt, turning it, as it turns, just to more sand in the desert. And he will march until he returns back to... What was the name of the city, by the way?
Paradise.
As he returns to Paradise, he will stand kind of at the precipice of the city. And he's going to walk in to the gates. Sword sheathed for now. And he's going to stand in the front little plaza where roads walk by and see the reaction as they see him again.
Everyone freezes in sheer and utter terror.
I'd like to grab a barrel, set it down, and sit.
You may.
And gesture them closer. The crowd.
They gather around themselves, but they don't get any closer to you.
I realized in my fervor I had not shared with you the tales of what your goddess allowed happen. And I find it will be important for you to know the whole story. And he's going to try and connect with this crowd. He wants them to understand what drove him to this. That he was once likely more devout than they were, and how far he had to fall to get here.
Okay. So, what will you answer? You've shared the intimacy of your story. What will you answer?
The common ground he shares is that he too was a deep devotee of the Empress. And that there is hope. There are other avenues for them. Actually, go ahead. I already said my part. I can't take it back now.
No, you can't. One of them will step forward. Yeah, a young man, probably in his mid-20s. Kind of mousy brown hair, spray of freckles across his nose and cheeks. He'll answer what still divides us. The difference is that we still have hope. I'm sorry for whatever made her turn away from you. Whether it was her capriciousness, or something someone did, or just her being distracted from trying to survive. I'm sorry. But we have hope. that she will continue to protect us, because we can't do anything else. This is our home.
I'd like to do something impulsive.
What would you like to do? What's the emotion that drives you here?
Everything he does has grief with it. But I think it's highlighted by knowing that his child is now gone, seeing this younger person saying that they have no option. He's driven by love. Eternal love. And he's going to set his sword down and quickly charge forward into a hug on this child. On a knee, hugging them. And he's going to say, "You have so many more options than you know. And the biggest crime is that you have been convinced that you are so little and so meaningless. You have so much ahead of you. Do not let the divines convince you you are without future or choice. Save your hope, unlike I do." And I think the advantage he sees... I think the trouble hits him hard and fast is that people seize the fact that he stepped away from his weapon.
Yeah.
What advantage do I seize?
You sense in this young man, there's a shift in the air. That it's what he meant to say to you was essentially that we have hope because our only choice is to have hope. But the fact that someone is here, standing against the gods, for the first time in history, it's not hope, not necessarily, but it is something else, something new. And that prospect is intriguing. And the advantage you seize is that he is definitely not the only one to come to that conclusion. But your weapon is seized.
Can I see who has it?
It's... I would say you could get a glimpse of it being very quickly sequestered further into the crowd.
Also, could I assume that this does my immortal trigger to share my hidden pain with someone who has broken your trust? I never really trusted them, so I don't know if that counts. It definitely is relieving to take away this. He's been the only one bearing this. Definitely some sort of relief to share it.
I would say... Do you want it to trigger your divinity? Do you want those flames that last time you were here caused so much destruction? Do you want to unleash them now? Or do you want to hold them back in this moment of resolve?
Instead of thinking of this tutelage from Sekhmet, he thinks of the grief and the mourning of his wife, and connects more with the lovers and the covenant he formed. And he wants to hold it back, as he's still holding onto this child. And the idea of burning him alive, just holding him in an embrace after all he told him, scares him.
The way your divinity manifests this time is slightly different. It's still warm. But it's warm. It's not burning you from the inside out. It's a gentle pulse, like a heartbeat, flickering like a candle's flame. And it's warm, and it almost seems to have a calming effect on those around you. Just slightly.
Do they continue to shuffle his sword away from you?
They've kind of moved it about directly to the center of the crowd and left it there. That's where they're feeling that it's probably safest.
Gotcha. No one person wants to take it and run, because that makes him a target. Makes sense. Still holding his child, he will kind of raise up, leaving hands on his shoulders, take one hand off, place it on the next person to him. Have hope. I don't know what in me gave me this power, but I doubt I could be the last. Perhaps here there is another who can walk the path to mend the balance between the gods and mortal kind. And for what comes next, I must apologize. But, and he will begin to walk towards his sword. I intend to cause no harm to any of you any further.
The crowd almost seems hypnotized by the effects of your divinity, just slowly parting one by one until there's this older woman and an older man clasping their sword, your sword, together in their joined hands. And they see you, and they pass it to you, together, as one.
He will grab it by the blade, sign of trust, and take it, and then grab the handle after they let go.
And they look
fully
at
giving
this
him
unfathomable grief in their eyes.
He looks back with the same grief to them. These don't look like they were the father or mother of the priest, do they?
No.
He will sheath the sword.
They're still just holding hands.
Care for them. Cherish what you have. And I think instead of the roiling blood red flames of the lion's mane, I think now it almost has this more pinkish, almost heart-like shape to the mane. As this calming, slow flame flicks past him. As he's going to step out to the wheat fields.
Okay.
He's going to coil a stalk of wheat in his hand and focus on this power of consumption. And he's going to, like he did with the snake, pull and feed on the life through this, on the essence of the Empress.
Okay.
And I think the flame probably flickers a little blood red as he's feeling this bloodlust.
A little bit.
But overwhelmingly, it's still with grief and empathy. How many? I roll 2d6 and...
Would you like to kill or spare the Empress?
Let me review what sparing God does. In their true form reveal, you know their downfall. It was lent to the last one. Describe how you spare them. Single favor of your choosing, such as lifting a curse. A strong. You can also bind them with a curse of your own. A miss, their seals. Mercy is eternal, you can never kill them. No matter how they trespass against you in the future, regardless of your role, you receive a semblance of their power. So I gain their power regardless.
You gain their power regardless.
But if I kill them, they see something vital from me as well. Name a part I lose. Their death transforms or changes the cradle, or they bestow a curse. I don't know if he has it in him to spare her. Can she speak to him?
Would you like to pray for aid? Pray for guidance?
No.
No? Would
I
you like
think
to connect with someone?
I would like to try and connect with her.
Share something intimate.
You are well known to have a counterpart, the Emperor. I can only imagine you love him. When I lost my wife, I imagine the hypocrisy of you to keep those you love and to deprive me of mine. We are divided, God and Godkiller, and we will never be on the same side. But I think there is a path forward where I could spare you. And he waits for the revelation of what common ground they share.
So what still divides you is God and Godkiller.
They are diametrically, by their nature, opposed.
A breeze seems to rustle through the grain, and from it emerges a woman about mid-40s, kind of honey blonde colored hair. You are very strong to have made it this far.
Yes, I have done things I could not have previously imagined.
As have we all. None of us could have predicted that the river would die. That we would be reduced to this. I am not like you. I am not mortal. Yet I fear death. I fear the cessation of life that will come with the end of the river. All will be over. Gods, mortals, the cradle itself will end. I fear this. And so I create. I must fill the cradle with life. That possibly something may survive when I am gone.
Zachyriah is going to look at her, one hand still on the wheat, and he's going to reach up and touch her face.
She allows it.
In seeing her allow him to touch her, he decides to spare her as he releases the wheat. I need to roll now, right?
You roll 2d6.
Anything added to him, or just...
No.
Okay.
7.
Oh!
A hit.
10.
Oh, a 10.
That's 10.
That's a 10.
6 and a 4.
Oh, it is. That was a different thing. That's a 10.
Yep.
So that is a strong hit. She will perform a single favor of your choosing, and you can also bind her with a curse. Worded as in, thou shalt not, and she must obey.
I think the miracle he beseeches her for. What is the name of her power?
Abundance.
I think the miracle he beseeches her for I know what I would like to curse her with.
Okay.
It is a hard curse to place on a god. Thou shalt not place deaf ear to crying devotees. She must hear every cry, truly listen to it. Now, that doesn't mean she has to grant it, necessarily, but it should be concerted and almost painful how much she has to hear all of them now.
You
I
give
think
her this curse, and her face breaks. She clasps her hands over her ears as she begins to weep.
And I think the favor he takes from her, the miracle. Now, do any of these arcana outweigh the others, or they equally have the power to overturn the others?
It depends on weaknesses and strengths.
Okay.
So you know that Death's power is her downfall.
Right.
In this moment of sparing her, you know that her power is Death's downfall.
Oh.
The downfall of Death is abundance.
I think the miracle he asks for is to give him back. He lost the connection to his home and his wife and his child. I think the miracle he asks for is a haven for those like him who would like to question the deities here in paradise. A place abundant in peace.
A haven in paradise for questioners of the gods where they will be left in peace.
Yes.
She stands from where she has fallen to her knees in her grief, tears streaming down her face. It shall be done, and I shall protect them.
He nods to her.
And she vanishes back into the wheat field.
He will turn to look at, I imagine, the gathered crowd.
They felt the energy of her essentially showing herself and came out to see this, and they see you spare her graciously. And the curse that you place on her, heavy though it is for a god, is a balm to these humans that even though they may not be answered, they will be heard. That moment of awe and the miracle that they are free to question and that she will still protect them. Not that she will leave them alone, but that she will protect them. Is more than anyone in the past had ever thought possible. People have seen curses from the gods and miracles from the gods and blessings and boons and gifts. They have never seen from a mortal the power to bind a god until now.
And I think he would like to use his divinity to unleash it as he goes back, walking through the town, likely drawing the crowd with him, to that foundation at the hilltop. And I think he wants to create, much like the forum in Greece where the philosophers would debate, he wants to create a thinking place, a place of philosophy and free thought, atop this hill, above the stress and ties of life above all that place to question. And I think he'd like to unleash his divinity with the rubble that likely still litters around the town to pull it back and assemble a new building, temple to mortal kind.
I feel like it's pretty clear that that is obvious.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is obvious, meaning everyone knows. It's not hidden, it's not secret, it's not taboo. It is public and it is welcoming. And as you see people slowly begin to filter in and revel in the beauty of this, that where once there was destruction, there is new creation. You see the elderly couple just standing at the entrance, looking at you, hands still clasped.
He will gesture to invite them in.
And they look at you and they smile and vanish.
Oh? Oh, the lovers.
The lovers.
Mm. And he just kind of nods. And as the burning mane of his divinity simmers, he will sit in the newly revived forum and listen to the people beginning to converse, likely those coming to approach him to ask him more questions, which he happily answers.
Especially with your divinity having shifted in front of them and now bringing new beauty and new life, and then becoming dormant. They
He's happy.
slowly begin to approach you, and as they see that you're kind of just sitting there and welcoming conversation, more and more slowly begin to approach you.
He answers all their questions and tells them stories of his life in Bralo, his art, all of it. And you feel, though he may have lost his peace and safety in Bralo, he smiles as he stares out at paradise now, knowing he's found a new one.
And that's where we will close this session, with one killed and one spared, and the cradle changed forever with this act of mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope we'll get to pick this up at a later date when everybody else wants to be lame and not play Dungeons and Dragons, then we get to be really cool and play Godkiller.
Oh, I'm so ready. Not that I don't want your game to happen, but
No,
I'm so ready for the next
This was also
Godkiller.
very fun, and we will see you next time.